David, do you have a favourite Muppet?
what a great opening question.
I like Kermit.
You like
Yeah, and Miss Piggy used to make me laugh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we still agreed on Pepe Le Prawn?
Pepe Le Prawn.
He's so funny.
I love Gonzo as well. Like, what's the movie where they find out that Gonzo's an alien?
Muppets in Space.
They spend the whole time trying to figure out who his parents are. Like, that's...
Yeah, Muppets in Space, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
Or the Christmas, their version of A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
That one is... I rewatched that last Christmas with Beck, having not watched it since I was a child. And it's very, very funny.
And
Michael Caine.
Yeah.
Michael Caine as Scrooge. Very good.
I like Muppets Treasure Island.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a good one.
I think my favourite Muppets were the two old men in the balcony.
Oh, Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah. But now I relate to them.
Muppets are funny. There's lots of jokes in there.
Yeah.
That you often probably miss when you watched it when you were a kid.
Oh,
as well.
absolutely.
I went above you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few. Welcome back, everyone, to the Chip Lunch Podcast. My name is Joel, and coming back in
Back in, yeah.
with green pants and a smile
Smile, wow.
is Brayden. Welcome. You haven't been on for a while.
Yeah, I just the way that the cards fell over the last term, college was on a Friday morning.
Cards fell.
So
Very gambler-esque of you.
yeah, true. You got to know when to hold them.
I'm going to fold this joke.
Yeah, so it's good to be back and thankful to Tim for holding the fort.
Subbing in, giving him a break.
Yeah, and giving me a great excuse to listen to some episodes.
Because you don't like listening.
I don't
to
like
yourself.
listening to my own voice. That's,
I can relate to that.
it's not, so it was lovely to get to jump on. I listened to Scott's during the week.
Oh, that's a good one.
And then
I enjoyed
I'm
Scott.
done part one of Chloe's.
Oh, that was a fun one too.
Yeah.
They're all fun, but
Yeah.
I've enjoyed the last few episodes that we've recorded.
Mm.
It's been fun. Welcome back to Hudson, who's behind the scenes producing as always, and welcome to our guest, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, mate. It's been
You,
good.
having texted back and forth with you a number of times, you seem to be quite an avid listener of the Chip Lunch podcast. Is that right?
Well, I've listened to some.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'd like to say I've listened to more, but I'm working on it.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you. Well, I appreciate you listening to it. I think I asked you once, it was a while ago, as I was looking in my texts, because I don't delete my texts anymore. I used to. Did you ever do that? Or do you ever delete your texts, or you keep them?
No, I never delete them.
Okay. Yeah. And I was seeing that you very kindly sent me a message during the COVID times and saying, oh, thanks so much for you doing a great job. So I really appreciated that.
Oh, you're welcome, mate. It's genuine.
Thank you.
Appreciate you all.
Yeah, well, and it was more just, it gave me a reflection on that time, going back to COVID times when I was on a Friday where you went even later into the night on Fridays, but
yeah, it was fun.
Fridays during COVID kept me going on the recording time, so that was cool. Anyway, welcome, Dave.
Thank you very
Awesome
much.
to have you along here with us. First question is, remember that? Were you here when I mixed up the questions?
I don't remember.
Okay, I went the second question first, but not going to happen today. Dave, how do you like to eat your hot chips?
Well, I told Stu on Monday that I don't actually eat chips. And he said, oh, don't say that, you won't go down very well. I do eat chips occasionally. But if my favourite way to eat hot chips would be with malt vinegar, North Atlantic battered cod,
Oh, wow.
and mushy peas.
Yeah, that's very, very English.
Very, yes.
I don't do it very often.
This has been exported from the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
This answer.
Do you put the malt vinegar in the mushy peas as well?
I do.
Yeah.
Right. I very little salt. Little salt. But
Okay.
yeah, and after having that, I also like chips and gravy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I don't eat much fried food these days.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
But I can dream.
Oh, you can dream. You can dream what you can do in heaven. Yes.
And I like them dark. I don't like the yellow oil.
yeah.
Oh.
I don't like yellow chips.
Yeah.
just don't like
I'm
it.
kind of agreeing with you there. I prefer darker and crispier.
Yeah.
Was that just because of the oil, or is it the type of oil?
I think it's a type
Yeah,
of oil.
yeah, because if they're cooked in tallow, isn't it? They're not that
yeah.
fluorescent kind of yellow.
Yeah, I prefer that. I prefer what you're saying, Dave.
And I don't like chicken salt.
Ooh.
Yes,
Controversy.
Yeah.
as always. Controversial characters. Two controversial characters debating over the type of salt that they have.
Yeah. We look to divide here.
Divide and conquer. It was a divide and conquer. That's very English, as we said.
Yes.
And you have a touch of an accent there. Are you from England originally?
Originally, yeah.
Where are you from in England?
Stafford.
Okay, can you explain to people where?
Stafford is in Staffordshire,
Yes.
which is right in the middle of England.
Yep.
Yeah.
Below Stoke-on-Trent and around Birmingham, Wolverhampton.
Mm-hmm.
And our house was about 500 metres or less from the main motorway.
Oh yeah.
So
What's that? The
M6.
M6. Okay. Yep.
And it was a good place to grow up.
Mm.
My uncle had a farm at the back of us.
Oh really?
And so we always had all these 8 fields to play and cattle and rivers. And my mother would see us in the morning, and then we'd come home when we were hungry.
Right.
And I had lots of cousins. We all lived around the same place, so it was great.
So you just hung out with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I got older, because it was so close to the motorway, all the soccer teams used to come to this place called Tillington Hall that was right opposite us, and they'd have lunch.
Yeah.
And I'd met all the stars of the
Tell us.
60s and 70s.
Tell us who you met.
I met Bobby Charlton, Dennis Law, George Best.
All the Manchester United boys.
Yeah. But virtually every week there'd be a team there, because Stoke, West Brom, Birmingham, Aston Villa were local, and they'd all stop there for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to Dennis Law one day, "Oh, Mr. Law. I mean, sorry, Dennis, can I have your autograph, please?" And I was about 9, and he just looked at me and he said, "It's Mr. Law to you, sonny." But most of them were really friendly, and they would sign our autograph books. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
Any Liverpool players? You're talking to 2 Liverpool supporters here.
Yeah. Oh well, that's tragic.
We were a bit high on winning the title.
Well,
this
you've
weekend.
done
Doesn't feel too tragic at the moment.
You've done very, very well to win it. And I'm second cousins with Steve Highway.
Oh, really?
A distant relation. Yeah. So
Liverpool player.
Liverpool player. A tearaway, brilliant Liverpool player. And
Steve Highway on the wing.
And he was fast.
Yeah.
And he actually caught up with my brother a few weeks ago, who's still in England, and was doing the family tree. So I don't know if it'll unearth anybody else. But claim to fame was playing not organised soccer, but we used to kick a ball around when he was in town.
Yeah, right. That's cool.
So yeah. So
who do you support then?
Manchester United.
Ooh. Same with us.
Yes! I support Manchester United, and I have done since I was little, and they were relegated, and I think this is worse than relegation, what they're going through right now.
Oh, yeah. It's atrocious how they've run that club.
Oh, it is, but we won't spoil it.
Yeah. No, we won't spoil it.
But Liverpool have done really well this year, and I have to. It grieves me to say it.
Yeah, I think like in contrast, in terms of clubs being run, I think we're up the top of the tree in terms of that stuff, which I think these days is what matters to being successful a lot of the time. If you don't have a oil-rich state behind you.
What made you pick Manchester United?
Well, good question. Yeah.
Like, did you have a relative or?
No, my brother was a mad Stoke City fan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's not for me. And I used to go up with
Wet,
him
windy
sometimes.
night in Stoke.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever been to Stoke, but it's one of the armpits of the world. It's wet, it's miserable, it's got, I shouldn't say too much, but it's just, you're always glad to get out of Stoke.
Right.
And so I used to go up with him sometimes. And I used to go to the local soccer teams, which Stafford Rangers, which they were non-league. But as we were at school, you either supported Liverpool or Manchester United because both were within an hour's drive. And
Yeah.
Right. And the two biggest clubs.
yeah, they were two biggest clubs. And then there was the Midland clubs
Yeah.
that people would go to.
So you're kind of in the middle of two kind of big hubs of like
Yeah.
the Midlands clubs are huge.
Yeah.
over
And the
there,
Northwest.
and the Northwest
Yeah.
clubs are huge.
Yeah.
So I
And my
guess-
best mate, he was, his parents were huge soccer fans.
Yeah.
And so I would either go with my brother or with his parents. And we would see, it was first division then.
Yeah.
But we would see first division nearly every week.
Oh, that's a dream.
So it was great.
Lovely.
It was great.
Imagine watching Premier League football at a good time.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're
I
wide
know, yeah.
awake, you're wide
Yeah.
awake. And
I remember being shocked when I was over there. It's like, I came through on at midday. This is great. Sit down on a Sunday. This is excellent.
That would be
It's
really
much
cool.
easier.
I would, imagine that. That's just your Sunday.
Yeah. We started this conversation talking about chips. Do you have any memory that goes along with like a battered cod and chips? Like
And mushy peas.
Yeah, mushy peas. When you think about that, is there a place or a memory
Yeah,
that is associated with that?
by Stafford Rangers Football Club, there was this great fish and chip shop.
Oh.
Yeah.
And we would go to the social club and have a couple of beers, and then we'd go and have fish and chips.
Yeah.
And so I associate that with some of the happier times of soccer.
Yeah.
You
which
call it
is-
football with us.
Oh,
All right.
thank you, football. the,
That's what I call it.
the universal game.
Yeah, exactly. You use your feet in it, actually.
Yeah, so I think soccer is probably one of the most things that I miss.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm into AFL
Yeah.
quite heavily. And I used to get up in the middle of the night to watch
Yeah.
the soccer, but I've got better things to do now. So, especially when you're losing all the time.
And you can watch the replay a bit easier now too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my daughter-in-law is a mad Liverpool fan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, so I think I associate that. There's not much I miss about England at all, except
really?
soccer and fish and chips. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm the anti-stew.
You haven't like romanticized it. No.
I've lived there. I don't need to romanticize.
Yeah, wow. It's,
Yeah, so I think that's England on a fine summer's day
Oh,
is
yeah.
great. You know, you it's a hard place to be somewhere else,
Yeah.
but not very often.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I think like no wonder a bunch of whingers given
Yeah.
the rain and
Oh, I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
sitting on a wharf in Liverpool, and we were over there in winter, and there was something really nice about sitting by the sea and stuff. But I just remember being like, oh, it's like 4:30, and the sun's going down,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's freezing. And so if you were working a 9 to 5, you probably wouldn't have seen the sun today.
You didn't. I worked in a factory, and
Yeah.
I used to go to work in the dark and come home in the dark.
Yeah, you
And
just-
yet, but summer, you know,
Yeah.
it was like we played soccer till 11 o'clock,
Yeah.
or tennis till 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
You
yeah,
know?
right.
Yeah.
And then you go home, have a quick
Yeah.
bath,
Yeah.
and go to bed.
Yeah.
And then
Whereas,
go to
yeah,
work.
yes, it is a bit rainy at the moment. But I was thinking, I was like, oh man, it's a bit chilly. And I'm like, it's like 17 degrees. It's not that bad, is it? It's not.
That's right. And I remember I never went back to England for 22 years at one stage, and I went back, and I arrived on the hottest day of the year, which was 30 degrees, and they're all you know, oh, isn't it hot? I said, no, it's great. It's great. But then you wake up after a few days, you wake up in the morning, and the skies are so grey,
Yeah.
and it's actually depressing.
Yeah.
I can feel mood changes in England because the sky is so grey.
Yeah,
And
totally.
in Manchester, they have a saying, if it's not raining, it soon will be.
Yeah.
Well, they even talk about like depression rates are really high in Finland, for example,
Yeah.
because it's so dark,
Yeah.
for so long of the year,
Yeah,
which doesn't, it totally affects your mood, I reckon.
it does. And the weather really does affect you, because I notice I'm a lot happier when the sun's out and when I can walk and stuff like that. In Calgary, Alberta, in the winters, it can often be 20 below,
Yeah.
and then they'll get what they call a Chinook, which is a wind that comes off the Rockies, and it's warm, and it melts the snow, and it gives you a day or two of spring in winter. But the suicide rate is really high after a Chinook, because you've had a couple of days of really good weather, and then people get depressed again. So it is interesting how the weather and circumstances can affect you.
Yeah, totally. And the sun, I think, is a big part of that.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah,
which is interesting that we've still gravitated towards living in places like England and Finland and Canada or whatever. That's really fun.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so much culture.
Yeah.
So much history. I mean, Australia's got great culture. I'm at home, and I love the culture. But you know, my son went to England as a 20-year-old, and he came back and he'd seen all these buildings that were 1500, 1600, built in the 1600, and he just was amazed by it.
Yeah,
and I do appreciate that about Europe. There's so much. Just like in the buildings and the architecture and stuff, you're like, oh, we don't have any of this.
well, it's like
and it's so easy to get around. You know, we would catch a bus to Dover, jump on a ferry, go to Oktoberfest, go to the daffodils, or you know, do you want to go to Germany for the weekend? Yeah, okay, let's go.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, you jump on what's the train called?
The Euro Express.
Yeah, it's called something though.
Eurostar.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Eurostar. Yeah, I've never been on that, but it was. I don't think it was around when I was living in England. I left England in 70s.
Oh, okay. I don't think they finished until mid-90s or something, or early 90s. Yeah.
But people go to special occasions. People will hop off to Paris, you know, for lunch, and then come back
for lunch. It's pretty cool.
It's a genteel.
Yeah. That's cool. Because I've actually been reading a book on D-Day, and you're just like, you don't even realise how close England is to France. Like it's, you can see it sometimes on a clear day, can't you?
From Dover. Yeah,
from Dover.
Yeah.
Anyway,
not that I've ever looked. You know,
I can't be bothered.
Well, can't be bothered with looking at France. Look somewhere else.
Wow. Well, we may as well ask the second question, because I think we're going to hear more about your history in England and then coming to Australia anyway. So when did you become a Christian?
Well, in some ways it's like deja vu, because I feel like I'm doing the prequel to Craig.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because he was Brethren raised, and I was Brethren raised. So we were taken off to church. Church, Sunday school, lie down, read a book, church. But the thing that amazed me, you know, the Brethren, and I've been interconnected with Brethren a fair bit. People used to stand up, the men used to stand up and share, or they'd pray, or they'd announce a hymn, and there was lots of silence. And I had an older brother who was a really, really rebellious. And I conformed for the first few years. And I remember as about a 6-year-old, church was boring, but I got the message that Jesus died. And that I wanted to be a Christian. And I remember as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, I sat in church one day and said, when I grow up, I want to be a missionary and things like that. But I think I came close to being bored out of the kingdom, because some people just droned on and on. And beautiful, godly women who I'm sure after my rebellious stage, when I came back to the Lord, their prayers had been answered. And some friends, they stood by me as I started to question. I never ever questioned my faith, and I never questioned my belief in God, but I didn't know how to apply it, because I think when you've got local believers running a church assembly, you can only go as far as the most mature of those can go, and some of them were mature, but they didn't really connect with our generation. You know, you have a gospel service every Sunday night, And so I understood the gospel, but I never grew in it. And then my mother had high expectations of us and my father, and it was always, what will people think? You know, if we rebelled and if we went off, and my brother did go off, as I said, and he laid the path for me to rebel because he was 3.5 years older, and I hung around with them a bit, and he rejected his faith completely, still does, and I try and talk to him about faith. But to him, it was something that was ritualistic.
Yeah.
And I said to him, 30 years ago when he was over here, it's a relationship. It's not the ritual that you go through. And he said, nobody's ever told me that before.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, right.
But all he can see is the faults in the church, and he won't see anything else. Whereas I thank God that even through my doubt and through my rebellion, I knew he was real, but I didn't know how I personally connected with him. Stu preached the other Easter Sunday, you know, about the cross, and I went to Easter Saturday, you know, and the disciples were all lost, and they'd seen Jesus die, and I knew that Jesus had died, but I didn't grasp that he'd resurrected. And I never understood about the Holy Spirit. And then I got into my teens, and believe it or not, I had long hair, and my mother hated long hair. And she would always say to us, "Why don't you get your hair cut? When are you going to get your hair cut?" You know. So we would grow our hair longer just to annoy her.
Yeah.
And I bought
Very
this
70s thing, right?
Yeah. and we would watch Top of the Pops.
Oh, yes.
And we'd see all the groups. And there was a nightclub in Stafford, and on Top of the World, we used to call it the Grunge. And every week they had a rock band.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thin Lizzy.
Yeah.
You know, all the top groups of the 70s would come, and we'd pay our £5, which was a fair bit of money in those days, I guess. And we would go and watch these rock bands, and we loved that. And I saw this old RAF camp coat, you know, and right down to the knees.
Yeah.
And in English winters, it was great.
Yeah.
So I used to wear it, and she'd say, "You're not going out in that. You're not coming to church in that. You know, what will people think?" I think, stuff what people think, Mum. You know? And that would cause trouble. So I'd go and put my jeans on, and you can't go to church in jeans. I said, "Well, would you rather me not go to church?" You know. Yeah. And in the end, I just stopped going because it was just. It was unpleasant. Yeah. And other kids of my age had all stopped going because whilst there was a great generation of Christians, they didn't really connect to our generation.
For people who haven't been to a Brethren church in the 60s and 70s, like walk through, do you mind if you remember stepping us through what did church look like when you walked through the door as a 6 or 7 year old? What, like, for people who don't really have a concept of what that would even look like.
Well, I was fortunate in that they'd moved on to being open brethren. Yeah. So they had flowers. Yeah. And they had a table. They would never call it the altar. Yeah. You know, there was the Lord's table, and there was bread and there was wine. Yeah. And we all sat facing the front, and one of the elders would welcome people, and then we would all sit in silence. And as supposed to be as the Lord moved, people would get up and read a passage of the Bible, make a comment, pray in the stained glass prayer voices. Yeah. You know, I didn't understand the lingo. Or we would sing some of the old hymns. And at my age now, I really appreciate the hymns because I know them off by heart. And they bring comfort. And I think that's one of the things that when I was rebelling from God, that stuck with you. But there was a lot of silence.
Yeah.
And as a 5-year-old, trying to sit there and be quiet,
Yeah.
you know, and we had to be quiet. And so, and that would go for an hour.
Yeah.
And then they would have the breaking of bread. And somebody would get up the front and we'd thank Jesus for dying and have like communion. And women weren't allowed to say anything. They just sat in silence. And I used to call it the Sunday morning hat parade because they all had. And the best one I ever seen was this lady had a black hat with black feathers all over. And every time she moved, the feathers would just go like. So I used to like sitting behind her because I wasn't get bored because I'd watch their feathers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, nice. It's a good solution.
Got to occupy yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's a very strange world.
Yeah.
And some people wouldn't associate with their families. If they weren't believers, they wouldn't associate with their families. And their kids would eat at a separate table. Fortunately, my parents weren't like that. But there was a sense of love there, and they've now moved well on, and women are allowed to share as long as they don't belittle a man, and women can lead services and do all sorts of things there. My mother, who died a couple of years ago, was 95, and she was the oldest one there, and she'd seen it grow up from a youth club. And there was a couple of rich families that got together in this area where she'd grown up, and it was a really poor estate area. And they just established a youth group and a youth club. And I was never allowed to go. My parents went there every Friday night, but I was never allowed to go because it wasn't the place for me. And but I went on Monday nights, which was for our age group.
Yeah.
I was 12, 13, and played snooker and played soccer and things like that. And that's how their outreach was. And they were very welcoming. And this place had about, I don't know how many houses. And our school was there. And as we grew up, there would be 100, 200 kids. Everybody came to Sunday school in the afternoon. Everybody, you know. And so I'd see people at school, and I'd see people at the youth group when I went there on a Thursday night, on a Monday night. But none of them were Christians. And the Christians in the church, they sort of kept, you know, you go there for Sunday lunch and you be on your best behavior, and then you go out, then you go back to church. So Sunday was just a big church day.
Yeah.
And because I hadn't got the real intimate relationship with Jesus, it was just a ritual.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get out as quick enough.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of what your brother said too, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Braden.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, and I'm sure those people prayed to God for him as they prayed for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I often ask myself, why did God answer the prayers for me and not for him?
Yeah.
And the answer is not yet. I live in hope, you know.
Yeah.
And one story about the closed ones, you had to, like, you couldn't just go to church in Kirrawee and then decide you were going to go to church in Gaimea.
Yeah.
You'd have to get a letter from your minister saying that you were a regular attendant, in good standing, and a Christian, and that you could be accepted into that.
Okay.
And my mother and my aunt, my aunt was a charismatic Baptist. She got divorced from my husband. My uncle divorced her, and he wasn't that much older than me, and so they were like an older brother and sister to my brother and I, and thought the world of them, and it broke me up when they divorced. But she later became a Christian, and then went to this charismatic Baptist church. And then her and Mum came over to Australia, and some friends of my parents had emigrated to Brisbane in the 60s.
Yeah.
And they both had a letter to say that they were in good standing. And anyway, they go to church in Brisbane, and they met at the door, and they asked, "Do you have your letters?" Now, my mum knew these friends, and so, well, I can vouch for Joyce, but she's got a letter, but I can vouch for her. And they asked Bob, for her, my aunt, where's your letter?
Joyce and Bob, great
Yeah,
names.
Joyce and Bob, aren't they? Vintage.
Of the time, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Joyce Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And they'd read the letter, and I'm done hard. And then they said to my mother, "It's okay, you can come in, but she'll have to sit at the back. She can stay, but she'll have to sit at the back." And so my mother said, "Oh, well, if she's got to sit at the back, I'll sit at the back too."
Yeah.
And so you had all these different things going on, and the more closed you were, the more suspect of everybody who came in.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And fortunately, as I say, our church never did that.
Yeah.
They used to get these guest speakers in on a Sunday night, and I was probably about 12, and I think, "What are you talking about?" That's why I say I get close to being bored out of God's kingdom.
Yeah.
And, because there's a Covenanters and junior Covenanters, which I was a part of, and but that was more to get you in, so that you'd go to church. And my one mate, who his mother, my mum and his dad lived next door to each other growing up, so they were really. And then when my mate was born, and I was born, we were 6 weeks apart, and we'd known each other since we were 6 weeks, and we used to do a lot of things together. And he would come with me, but he would never accept anything to do about God, and he's still the same. He still sends me all these stupid things on WhatsApp and things, and
Like atheist stuff? Is that what you mean? Or
atheist stuff, and just crass jokes, and he's still stuck in the 60s,
Which is impressive because it was a while ago.
I went back. I mean, this is an example of him, and I was best man at his wedding, and we did a lot of things together. And I went back 2005, and I said I hadn't been back for 22 years. My dad had died in 83, and I went back for that. And we went for a beer one night, and I said, do you want to go for a curry? He said, don't eat it. I said, all right, well, how about Chinese? Don't eat Chinese. I said, well, you've never eaten Chinese? He said, I've never eaten Chinese in my life. And 20 years ago, so he's a 50-year-old white male.
Yeah.
And he'd never eaten Chinese or Indian in his life.
Yeah.
And I said, well, come on, it's about time you did.
Yeah.
especially curry in England. For
Yeah,
people, right?
yeah. Well, we would be out the curry house every Saturday night.
Yeah.
I just loved it. But no, he wouldn't come because he got his girlfriend, and he got married young, and neither of them liked curry, so they never had it.
Yeah.
To make them
missing
lived.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people like that, I think.
Yeah.
Not so much now, but the gateway to Europe, you go over there. I mean, I went to Europe on my 19th birthday. I went to Spain, and it's just great. Sunshine, but the food, they tried to cook the food in an English style, and you'd get down there, and they would bring you this fish, and its eye was looking at you. So. Did I cover your point about the Brisbane church?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sidetrack here and there. But
That's fine.
Well, you can see why, like, the boredom aspect would step in, especially when you've got, like, you start associating, well, church is sitting quietly for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And everyone going through the ritual of things. You can see why. I don't know, maybe the things going on at top of the pops and the nightclub are a little bit more exciting.
yeah. And it's true, you know. It's when I made a genuine conversion, those times were meaningful to me.
Yeah.
But when you don't understand them, and there's nothing that's pitched at you, for an hour and a half, and the same thing every week.
Yeah,
was just.
It sounds like there's like a lack of joy. Is that correct?
Well, people could talk and be jolly afterwards. So I don't know if there's a complete lack of joy. I just think there was just such a reverence that had lost its point.
Okay.
It became, as I say, ritualistic, but also you couldn't express yourself.
Yeah.
And anything outside of their world just wasn't acceptable.
Yeah. But it wasn't necessarily articulated well either, so it just became something lost to.
Like I have quite vivid memories and I can remember certain things, but I never ever remember somebody being really joyful about God, and that's what I should want.
Yeah.
And that was what I could have, you know. I mean, soul is about Anglican as I want to get, and I'm an ordained deacon, not from Moore College, but it was a slide on me apparently. So yeah, I think that with my mother being so concerned about what people thought about us, and we had to project this thing, and we were always in trouble if we didn't project the image. And then when my brother got a speeding ticket one night, you know, he'd been out and he'd come back in, and he went past my bedroom and said, "Watch this."
This is like the previous version of doing pranks on your mum on social media. Watch this.
So I sat up in bed and
got your popcorn ready.
and I opened the door further so I could hear. And I heard it. "What have you done? What have you got? How could you do this to us? Why did you let us down like this?" And he said, "Will it be in the papers?" And he said, "You know, it's only a speeding ticket." And, she was off the air for 2 or 3 days. And whatever will people think, you know. And I think, I don't know if I can say this, but our line to each other for the last 50, 60 years has been, who gives a stuff what people think? Because, you know, you were raised in that. So to me, it was
raised in it so much,
it was just why I never had an alternative to be good.
Yeah,
not that I was bad all the time, but I never had the alternative to good. And it might be that I missed out on something. I don't know. I'm thick. Maybe I missed out on the message of the gospel or the change that Jesus can make. But I certainly had trouble applying it.
Yeah. Well, so it was just you and your brother?
Yeah, just me and my brother. And my mum and dad were the only Christians in their entire family.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Both sides and all the other relatives, except for my aunt later.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it was like living in two worlds.
Yeah.
You went to church and you lived in that world.
Yeah.
And then you came home and you just lived like everybody else.
Yeah.
Which was terrible. I look back and I reflect on it and I think, what a letdown. You know?
Yeah.
And so to me, Christianity was for old people.
Yeah.
Yes, they had their joy, their knowledge, and it, you know, I thought old people with one foot in the grave and the other on a banana skin, and they were just going to go off and go to heaven,
Yeah.
So, and I'm sorry that I missed out on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you almost feel like it was Christianity was like disconnected from the real world in that way?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like
it was two worlds.
Yeah, exactly. Like you had, this is the world that I'm living in, and then we get pulled into this other thing for a couple of hours on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And we have to be quiet, and then I'm going to step back into the real world.
I'm going to rev up. You're like a chameleon.
Yeah.
You walk into church and you take on this aura.
Yeah.
And then you walk out of church and you think, that's it.
And you brush it off.
Yeah. And there's a Bible commentator called Warren Wiersbe, who I didn't agree with all of his theology, but I like some of the things he said. And he says that every church should have, as you walk in, it should have enter to worship. And as you walk out on the other side, it should say depart to serve.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, gee, that's good. And so when I was starting to understand it, I sort of tried to embrace that. And I worked for a guy who was a Brethren guy, and he was a friend of my parents. And he was a tyrant. Terrible. We started work at 8 o'clock. And if I wasn't at work by 5 to 8, sitting at my desk with the pen out and the phone plugged in, ready to answer it, I would get strips torn off me. Everything, the way that he spoke to people and everything was just awful. And that just reinforced my, I'm in the world now.
Yeah, yeah. So how old were you when you kind of followed your brother and stepped out for a minute?
Probably about 14, 15. I enjoyed it as long as I could.
Yeah.
And then as I say, none of my other friends were Christians. And so I'd been able to put off go to church and either see them later or, I can't go to church. And then I just got to the point where it was causing trouble and causing friction between me and my parents.
Mm. Yeah.
So I said, no good going.
Yeah, yeah.
And with your mum being so, like, what's that going to look like to everyone else? Was there any threat of you being kicked out of home or anything?
I left home a couple of times.
Did you?
Yeah, I packed my bags and said, I'm going. I can't stand this anymore.
Wow.
And then I went back after a few days and I said, do you want me to come back? And he said, well, it's up to you. And I said, yeah, well, it's up to you too, because I just feel like I can't live like this anymore. But through all this time, there was one couple who had 5 kids. And when I was about 15, 16, I started to look after their kids. They'd go out and I'd babysit for them. And I kept in touch with them. And they supported me, they accepted me. And there was a couple of others who I played badminton with. So outside of the church, they showed their love to me. And that was the bridge that kept me. These people who knew I was really struggling didn't bash me.
Yeah.
Because whenever I did go to church occasionally just to get some peace, they would sit me down after a coffee, and I would smoke. And this one woman, I remember one night, this woman said to me, "You shouldn't be smoking. It's wrong." Blah blah blah. And break your cigarettes. And she prayed over me, and I just, what am I? Here we go again. I'm not ready, but here I am having something forced upon me.
Mm.
But there was about 3 couples who I kept in touch with, and they just loved me and accepted me and stood by me. Yeah. And I didn't realize, but they were showing me Christ's love at the time. Yeah. I soon did. But yeah, so it was... I'm not anti the Brethren. I think they've done a good... they had the good things. But it wasn't a pleasant experience growing up in a Brethren church for me. But at the same time, I don't know anything else, and so I just have to take it that's the way look back at, I'm over all the negatives. I might not sound it, but
Yeah.
I'm over all
Yeah.
the negatives, and I've made my peace with God. And I used to think, as I said, that Christianity was for older people, and that it was boring. And I wanted to live my life. But at the same time, I never lost sight of God. Never stopped praying to God or reading my Bible.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't talk about God.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Which is how it shouldn't. It should never have been like that.
But I don't feel like I'm hearing hurt from you anymore. I think you're just describing your experience.
Yeah, it's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was enough positives in there to keep me connected, but I'm not hurt because I was the one who made the decisions. But some of the comments and some of the things that were done to me by people who wanted the best for me, but didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And so I have no malice to them. I've forgiven them for everything now.
Yeah.
And, I'm part of the problem. So, I can't, I think, I'm sure my brother won't hear this, but he likes to have something to hold on to so that he doesn't have to deal with anything.
Yeah.
And I've said that to him, you've got to let go of things because they're going to just cause you, if you let them fester, they're just going to cause you awful things. But he chooses to hang on.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I had the freedom to say, look, God, I'm really sorry. And I have no malice to these people whatsoever.
Yeah.
They were trying to do what was right within their limitation of their faith. And I'm sure that every denomination has got that,
Yeah.
where people have been so controlled by their doctrine rather than the theology of the Bible. And I've probably done wrongs. There's probably some people who aren't Christian because of me. But you have a choice, when bad things happen, you can be bitter or it can make you better. And I think I choose to be better. Not always. And some of the trips I've taken to be better have been really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's an element of personal responsibility.
There is.
I think that's what you're saying as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's how, there's nothing that I can do. It's what Jesus has done.
Yeah.
And if I choose to accept that, and if I choose to bear a grudge, then I'm the one who misses out. And there's an element of personal responsibility in everything that you do. Like God will give you the choice. He won't force you to do anything. And he might guide you to do something in a way that you would never have chosen to.
Yeah, definitely.
But he's with you all the way. And I'm thick. I don't learn things the easy way. I'm thick.
So you're kind of finishing high school. Oh, you told me just before we started recording you left high school at 15 though.
Yeah, I left school at like 15, yeah.
And what did you go to do? Well, work, I'm guessing, but...
Well,
because that was more of the done thing back then.
It was, you go and get an apprenticeship.
A trade or something.
A trade or whatever. And I worked, I would say pumping gas, but, serving petrol. Free. And my first job was 10 pence an hour. And I worked 40 hours.
Yeah.
And then the second week I worked 40 hours. And I went and bought my first pair of Levi's, and they were £6. But then I stayed at this job for a while, and then I worked in a factory, and then I worked in an office, and then I worked in another factory, and I'd been retrenched 3 times by the time I was 21.
Wow.
Jeez.
And I just thought, I'm going to get out of this country. I'd always talked to my dad, let's go to Australia. Let's go to Australia.
Yeah.
Or let's go to Canada. And little did I believe when I believed that Christianity was boring and I wouldn't go anywhere, that I'd go to both those places in God's timing,
Yeah.
And you still think this is boring, Dave? So yeah, there is a personal responsibility, and I think take God at His word is the one thing that I've learned.
Yeah.
Because I'm not into the blessing and the prosperity theology. But when you walk right with God, you know he's with you, and you know that if you commit your way to him, he will bring it to pass. It's more than saying, I'm going to do this. It's committing and staying. And sometimes it's difficult to stay.
Yeah.
But you really need to stay, I think.
So there is a moment where you think back and you go, yes, I am a Christian. Like, was there a actual point where you because I always think when we ask people about when you became a Christian, or were these moments in your life where they actually decide, there's usually a time where something happens, they have to make a decision. Is there a time in your life around that time where you're just like, I am a Christian, even though you were rebelling from being in that church and not wanting to be and feeling like you needed to move out of home and stuff too? Yeah,
well, I ended up 2 or 3 times moving out and then going back. But I left home in my early 20s. And my one set of friends who had the kids, as I say, they always stuck by me, and they had a home church in their house. Oh. And I would go and visit them, but I would often not stay for their church. And they had a niece over from New Zealand, and we started going out together. And they invited us to a Crusade, which was in Wolverhampton. It was November, and it was a really, really foggy, miserable English night.
No.
Jane's been to England once and hates it. My wife. Yeah. I took her over. We were married, and I took her over, and she just hated it. and the times I've been back, I said, I think I'm going to go to England. Do you want to go? No.
Don't want to go.
I said, do you want to think twice about that? No. So she'd had enough. And so anyway, I remember I'd been thinking about it all day at work. I'm not going to go tonight. It's dangerous, you know. And so I called my friend up. And I said, look, I'm not going tonight. And she said, I think that's really sad. I think you should come and at least give us a go, you know. And so I said, okay, I'll go. I got the feeling of the guilt. I said, but I'm not going forward. I'm not going to do anything like that, you know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
don't want to do that.
No, and that's the night when the gospel clicked to me.
Yeah.
And I put off going because I sensed that something was going to happen. And the weather was a convenient excuse. And I honestly don't remember everything that was said, but it was a time when Jesus had become real to me, and that I'd already accepted his death, but I couldn't accept the resurrection. And then the resurrection became so quick, so real, and the Holy Spirit. And I just was gobsmacked. And then at the end of it, I just thought, I'm still not going forward. And I just felt really convicted. And that's when I said, Lord, I'm really sorry. Can you forgive me? And can I make a fresh start? And I went forward. And I was interviewed by an Indian guy who was a committed Christian. And I thought, this is interesting. He's come from a foreign faith and embraces the gospel. And he wrote me a couple of times. And I came home changed and understanding what all the things that I'd heard, or I knew that being a Christian was real.
Yeah.
And I knew that the Jesus that I met that night was fair income. Was worth giving my life to.
That's cool.
So it was kind of that shift between like knowing something and then all of a sudden understanding it.
Yeah. I think one of the verses that scare me is, you know, the demons believe in Jesus, you know, and they know what's coming. They believe it, but it hasn't changed their behavior. I guess it can't theologically, but I believed in Jesus, and it started to change my behavior.
Yeah.
And it was difficult, and then I got to the point where I think I was 22, and I decided I'm going to go to Cape and Ray Bible College, which is a Bible school, and I want to find out who this Jesus really is, and I'm going to quit my job and throw it in and go there for 6 months.
Yeah.
What did your mum think of that?
She never thought I'd go.
She thought you wouldn't commit
She
to
thought
it.
I would go. She questioned my commitment to Jesus. She said, "How long is it going to last this time?"
Oh, yeah.
And then when I said, "Look, I'm going to go to Bible college," she said she was excited, but she told me afterwards that she never thought I would go. My dad did, and I went, and I mean, she'd be aghast at the way my life turned out.
Yeah, what would people think?
Yeah. I mean, I know she loved me. She just showed her love in a very funny way.
Yeah.
You know, she grew up in the war. She grew up in poverty.
Yeah.
And it influenced her. My uncle, I bought a pair of shoes when I was in England, and he said, "Oh, I love them. And where'd you get them?" And I told him, "I'm going to go and get a pair of them." And he said to me, "I've got a fetish for shoes." He said, because when I was a kid, all I got was hand-me-downs, and they had no soles. He used to have to put cardboard in and walk in English winter. And so, you know, and my mother would often say, all we got for Christmas, if we were lucky, was an orange. You know, and look at the things that you've got and stuff. And so she grew up in a different era. She grew up in, my father came from a wealthy family, but his dad did the dirty, and he ripped off the tax aid, and my dad had sold everything that he owned and paid my granddad's fee because he couldn't see him go to fine because he couldn't see him go to prison. So they knew what it was like to do it tough.
Yeah.
But she never stopped. Like, to her, she had these ideals about what a Christian was. Yeah. And it was like keeping up with the others. Yeah. And as I say, I know she loved me. Yeah. And I loved her. But now my mother-in-law, I loved my mother-in-law. She was one of the most influential people in my life. And I was really sad the day she died. And so I can't give love. You know, she believed in me. And I think my mother had lost some sort of belief in me.
Yeah. I think it's tricky when you're younger to relate. Like, it feels like the older people in your life just appeared and are that way. And I think as you collect more experiences over life, you kind of put it together. It's like, oh yeah, you're made up by the moments and the experiences that she'd gone through. And you only have that perspective once you have some perspective. Yeah, you do. You're able to go, oh yeah, okay, I can kind of see a little bit the way that she was made up. But at the time, like when you're younger, you're just like, oh, can you lay off a little bit? Yeah. And I think, you know, you just got to let your kids be who they are. Yeah. Not what you want them to be. Yeah. And guide them into what you want them to be. Yeah. But just let them be. Yeah, it's tricky. And let them, you know, give them the guidelines and they'll come back. 2 of my kids don't follow God, which breaks our heart. And the thing that breaks our heart even more is that they've got kids, and how do we communicate? Because both their spouses grew up knowing nothing about God. And it was really interesting. One of the spouses kept asking me questions when they first got together, and my son would bring her around, and she would ask all these questions, and then she'd go away, and we'd talk about things, and we'd say, we'll pray for you, and we'd do this, and we'd get messages from them both. Will you pray for us? And pray about this and about that. And every so often their upbringing comes to, you know, they know what a real Christian is. They've seen lots of real Christians.
and perhaps like me, they weren't ready to be one.
Yeah, it's that knowing, understanding difference again.
But that's the hardest thing in our lives right now is knowing that our kids and our grandkids don't necessarily follow Jesus or don't know who Jesus is. So we try to bridge that gap as much as we can by spending time with our grandkids.
Yeah, it's tough.
But, you know, God's a God of miracles, and we just pray. Like, I came back.
Yeah.
It's very true. The question I wanted to ask you was that, and I don't know when this happened, but when did you end up coming to Australia then?
Oh, that's another episode.
All right, well, I'm glad you said that, because what we'll do is we'll finish this episode and then we'll start that with part 2. How's that sound?
Sure.
All right, well, stay tuned. Braden, you stay tuned. Oh,
Not-
no, you
not
won't.
going
You won't,
anywhere.
because you won't listen to yourself on this
No,
one.
I'm experiencing it.
You experience, it's an experiential.
I'm with you, mate. I'm with you.
But we'll return in a minute with Dave's part 2. Soon.